We're here at MTA, and the conference is about to begin. We're with Brian Crommett of 702 Communications in Fargo. And now you guys have done some really interesting things with your cohorts to deliver gigabit to the schools in a large portion of upper Minnesota. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, that's right. We are excited to talk about the NWLink's NMSA project, which is a group of 150 schools and libraries in northwest Minnesota. And we've had service to those locations through a number of contracts since 2002. And in the most recent iteration, we offered them gigabit connectivity to all of their locations.
Are you finding that they know what to do with a gigabit?
We actually aren't at the point where anybody's actually signed up for one. But the first thing you need to do is make it available to them, right? And then you need to get into brainstorming about ways that it could be used, and how can you take what's available and really turn that into learning. And so I think that's the process that we're working through right now. There are some schools that have voiced some interest in it. And we just wanted to make sure that we were ahead of the curve on being ready to provide it.
Well, Gresham's law, I think, was supply creates its own demand, and I'm sure it will. But I also suspect, too, you guys are doing a lot in terms of finding ways that they can use it, right?
Well, that's true. This has been a network that's got a lot of distance education in it, a lot of video conferencing, and we've been pushing to help them find other ways to really utilize the network and to push the envelope and have more content that they can deliver, especially to the rural schools. But then also you have initiatives that are putting iPads, in the hands of every student, and you have initiatives that are putting more computers in the classroom, and now with the new E-rate initiatives that are looking to put more Wi-Fi in the schools, that's going to drive bandwidth needs up as well. So again, we just wanted to make sure that we were ready when the schools are ready to make that leap.
In distance, you mentioned that long distance, and why don't you describe some of the distances we're talking about?
We've tried really hard to partner with telephone companies that will let us deliver service level agreements to make sure that we can have anybody on site within 4 hours. When you talk about the network, it ranges down to Morris, to Baudette, and over to Brainerd, and so we really are covering a pretty big geographical footprint with this network.
You're talking hundreds of miles.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
And so how does, from an application standpoint, you mentioned iPads, and they're inherently wireless. So are some of the telephone companies then working kind of at the local level to create kind of wireless networks on campus and help them with those networks?
That really varies from district to district, whether or not they're comfortable, and they see the need to do that right now. But whenever they're rolling out an initiative like that, we're hoping that they will come to the local telephone provider, who they've trusted for years through this project. And that was one of the beauties of this is, 702 may hold the contract or manage the contract on behalf of Northwest Minnesota Special Access, but the local schools are still provided service through their local telephone providers. And so they still have that local feel and that local support, that they've come to rely on. So.
Well, and I'd imagine, too, there's opportunities for kind of sharing best practices, both with the telephone companies, but also with the school districts as well.
Absolutely, and that's been a really big part of the success of this network is the support is centralized through 702. So we see, any ticket, any comment, any trouble from the whole network comes to us first. And so then when we have a meeting with all the telephone companies, we can say, we're seeing this on the network, or we're seeing this on the network. Let's make sure that we're ready for this, and let's make sure that we're handling these kinds of issues in this way.
You're also seeing applications on the network as well that people are using?
We definitely, we've always provided a network-wide spam filtering, and we talked about, different email, but the schools themselves, through NWLinks, have their own meetings where the tech coordinators get together and they share those kinds of ideas. We're not actively pushing them to say, you need to adopt this technology or this technology. That's really something that the schools and the libraries are, don't forget about the libraries, right. That the schools and the libraries are really getting together and saying, this is what our patrons or our students or just our peers are talking about. How can we make this happen? And, how can we use, the connections we have with our telephone providers to make that happen.
Now, are all the schools and the school districts, are they located within the boundaries of the traditional ILECs, or are you kind of expanding beyond those?
We do have some of our partners that provide service in their CLEC territories, but really Northwest Minnesota Special Access is made up of ILECs, aside from 702, who is a CLEC in Moorhead.
It's an exciting opportunity that you guys have created, and it's helping a lot of school districts that otherwise would be stuck probably with pretty low bandwidth.
And that's really the message that we want to get out. You hear about how, especially rural Minnesota, not just Minnesota, but rural America doesn't have access to high bandwidth, and it may be that we're not delivering gigabit to each home throughout rural Minnesota, but I think it is important also to realize that there is gigabit now in rural Minnesota, and the local providers have done it, and we don't need state or federal government to build it because we already have.
And you've got it to the anchor institutions, it sounds like.
Absolutely, and we're interested and we're ready and we're positioned to roll it out even further.
Excellent. Well, Brian, appreciate your time. Thank you.
And very nice to meet you.
Likewise.